Hello and welcome to another episode of TFG Indian Football Roundup presented by Rayor, the official kit partners of Kerala Blasters FC. Go to rayorsports.com right now to get amazing deals on the beautiful jerseys that they have this season. Right at the beginning, let's congratulate Real Kashmir FC on winning the IFA Shield. It was the 123rd edition of the historic Shield, and Real Kashmir FC won it for the first time, and they've become the first ever club from Jammu and Kashmir to win a national level major cup tournament. This was a very important edition of the tournament because one, it's happening behind closed doors during a pandemic, so a second trial run of the bubble after I-League qualifiers and before the actual I-League was necessary, and this showed that this works. And second, the sporting reason was that clubs like Indian Arrows, Gokulam Kerala FC, Mohammedan Sporting, Real Kashmir, they all needed an early season cup tournament to get ready for I-League, and they got that. And interestingly, there's a power vacuum currently in the I-League side of things because East Bengal and Mohun Bagan have joined ISL. In fact, this is the first time since 1908 that the IFA Shield did not feature even one of East Bengal and Mohun Bagan. Those are the two most successful clubs in this tournament's history, and it's almost unthinkable to see the Shield without these two. But what I think we saw was that IFA Shield can stand on its own due to its significance to the calendar. And so will I-League without East Bengal or Mohun Bagan, because there are lots of clubs like Real Kashmir, like Gokulam Kerala FC, like Churchill Brothers, like Mohammedan Sporting. They are all stepping up to assume a leadership position on that side of Indian football. And of course, there's an AFC Cup spot still on the line in I-League. So it's going to be a pretty interesting season, and Real Kashmir FC, what they have achieved. At just 4 years old, they have won the IFA Shield and entered the history of Indian football. It's amazing, and hopefully when this season is over, they will get to take that massive IFA Shield trophy back to Kashmir and show off to the people of Srinagar. Because let's face it, a big part of the excitement of winning IFA Shield is to try to lift that thing. I mean, look at it, it's massive. So I hope when Real Kashmir go back to Srinagar after they finish playing I-League, they get to take the shield back and put it on display at least for a week. Because it's already a huge achievement for the revival efforts that have been happening in Jammu and Kashmir football over the last decade, and making it memorable for the fans by allowing them to see this big shield and touch it. It's going to make this event unforgettable. No one who touches the IFA Shield and feels its weight ever forgets it. Same thing happens with Federation Cup. These old trophies, they carry with themselves an aura of the history that they have been a witness to, and it's a privilege to be able to experience all that. So congratulations to Real Kashmir FC again. The focus of this episode, however, will be on Jamshedpur FC, who in so many ways are a stereotype defying institution. By stereotype, I mean the typical ISL franchisee. I mean, when you think of a team that was born as an ISL franchisee, you make certain assumptions about it. For example, you think that this team first built a first team that plays in the actual ISL and later over time built a youth system and an academy. But that's not true for Jamshedpur FC. We've all heard about Tata Football Academy, which has been around for many years now and has produced some of the best talent for the Indian national team. So they already had an academy, they had been doing grassroot camps and other efforts, and then they came into ISL with the first team. The second stereotype is that they don't have any infrastructure of their own, but that does not apply to Jamshedpur FC because the JRD Tata Sports Complex is owned by Tata Steel. So Jamshedpur FC not only has its own academy infrastructure, it actually has a stadium of its own. The third prevalent stereotype about ISL teams is that it comes from a so-called A city, that the home venue of this team was picked after making a calculation about how much the average middle-class family in that place spends in shopping malls and multiplexes. That does not apply to Jamshedpur at all. In fact, Jamshedpur marks the first instance when ISL has had a team in a B city. I mean, Jamshedpur is not the capital of Jharkhand, and it's also not the most rich city of the state. It's also the only team in ISL that doesn't have an airport attached to its city. It's an industry town that's close to the tribal belt that spans across Jharkhand, West Bengal and Odisha. So the typical Jamshedpur FC supporter does not look anything like the typical Chennai FC supporter or the typical Mumbai City supporter in an economic or lifestyle sense. And in many ways, Jamshedpur FC has been more successful in amassing a local following than some of these A City franchises. I mean, in the early days when I saw the sold out crowd for Jamshedpur FC at their home matches, I thought this was driven by hype, and I anticipated that the excitement would kind of fade away in a couple of years. But I was wrong. This season, there's no match happening in Jamshedpur, but till the end of last season, and looking at social media, how regular fans are still interacting with each other about the club and following its matches, they do have a stable fan base that's going to stick with the team on the long term. And even the club itself seems to be driven by a larger long term vision rather than meeting goals on the short term through marketing and other flashy activities. If I am to give a personal example, I am from Purulia, which is not very far from Jamshedpur. It's like a couple of hours by train. And I have seen a sudden surge among kids in my district of wearing Jamshedpur FC jerseys and other clothing items. So, whatever they're doing quietly is having a result. It is winning over hearts and minds. And their first team seems to be making a little bit of improvement as well. In fact, very recently they just beat Northeast United, who were unbeaten until that match this season. So, to get a clearer picture about this diversified approach that has been taken by Jamshedpur FC administration, I spoke to the CEO of the club, Mr. Mukul Choudhary, who also happens to be the Chief of Sport Excellence Center owned by Tata Steel. He addressed everything I talked about in the introduction and much more. And to be honest, he seemed a lot more forthcoming and willing to discuss things publicly than most CEOs that we see in ISL or I League. So hope you enjoy this conversation and the deep dive into this new club. So thank you for talking to me.
Hey, hi, Chiranjit. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, sir.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, Jamshedpur FC is a bit unique among clubs that have been born after ISL started, in the way that Tata Group has been connected to football for decades now, and there was already like a youth setup that was existing and other activities in football, and the first team got added on top of that. It was not like a top down like most ISL clubs. It's uh, you know bottom up with the whole architecture being there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It was more like a forward integration for us.
yeah, did that make it easier for you to like launch the club on a short notice? Because as we know, like
Not really, not really. No,
yeah,
no, no, not really, not really. Because youth system is something else, and the club, putting a club together, see, youth system helps the club in long term. Okay.
yeah,
So having a youth system already being there helped us in getting the club together, not really. Because you
mm,
had a draft, so you were supposed to pick up players from the draft. Your academy boys were not in the draft.
yeah,
So you were starting your, this is I'm talking about 2017.
yeah,
So typically you had to do your entire jig bang the way you wanted to do. In the long term, of course, it will help you because in terms of having your own produce, which is there, it will only be more viable for you to get it done. It will be more cost efficient to that extent. And we had to, but again, this was, for example, the TFA was more like a college,
mm,
okay, but you didn't have a primary school. So then, because now you are into, because you basically had some people who had coming from, you used to pick them up from Shubroto, used to pick them up from under 15 tournaments, Nike Premiership, so all those tournaments you used to pick up. Plus, you used to do a lot of screening to get admission or other induction into TFA.
yeah,
Okay. But now that you have decided, you have now set up, now that you have commercially stepped into the sport, right from getting the right kind of players into the system, on the grassroots level, that became much more important for you, which was probably not something that was on the priority list. You were picking up players who were in the age group of 15. But
yeah,
now, because you want to make the entire chain, the whole thing had to, so it was a part of the youth system was ready,
mm,
okay, and which is there. Plus, your other system had to be put together. So your grassroots is now put together. You also had a reserve team because see, once upon a time, age was not so much stringently observed. But in since 2010, if you have seen, the TFA boys ka overall induction into the national team was less because
mm,
Tata was strictly following the age norms. Okay, which was not the story before. Where because even AIFF never imposed on anybody.
yeah,
Okay, and this was true with most of the academies and even national team for that matter.
Hmm.
Okay, so all that things changed. At the same time, now one started becoming a little more stringent in terms of how one would observe, get people input was very much focused upon, which helps the country also in the long term, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So it's it's a win-win over. Of course, those benefits come over a period. But yeah, it was a forward integration. It helped us, but whether it helped us in the first year, not really. In the long term, maybe 5, 7 years down the line, when you have the entire system in well-oiled system which is progressing, then maybe you will be in a much better situation.
So is there like a whole structure of a plan already in place,
Of
like
course, of
where
course,
the
of
club
course,
has
of
to
course, of
go
course.
in the next 10 years?
Of course, there is because now we started that in the first year itself. So what we realized that it is not only about getting these youngsters and you take 50, 20 people, train them and try to bring them to a certain level. You have to start an entire culture of
Hmm.
football. So which we started figuring out that we have to work along with the local schools. And most importantly, whether you have bachas, yes, there are lots of bachas because every school has bachas.
Yeah.
Okay, so you might have something like close to 7,000, 10,000 or maybe 15,000 or 20,000 kids all over the school. But that's not the point. Point is you don't have teachers.
Hmm.
Because first you have to basically develop coaches. So we, in the first year, 2017-18, one was developing coaches. So that's something that we started. We thought that it was important that you have licensed coaches and not people who played yesteryears, who knew football or were attached to football, but maybe not. Just because you have a background of football doesn't mean that you can teach.
Hmm.
So, and lack of anything else, you should not take up coaching. It is because you're licensed, because you are basically knows the scientific delivery of the program, is why you're taking coaching.
Yeah.
And that's what we tried to do in terms of educating them. And we created close to 220 odd coaches the first year. And then we got into soccer schools because you have to have a mass approach altogether. Because one is, they will also supplement and complement your fan development programs going forward. At the same time, it helps you in building the culture when you have mass engagement.
Yeah.
So just to share with you, as we speak today, we had close to, just before the pandemic, we had close to 3,000 odd kids engaged with us
Yeah.
who used to regularly do soccer schools with us.
So,
So that's how we started taking steps in that direction.
so are these 3,000 kids mostly in Jharkhand, or you're branching out to other parts
No,
of India?
Jamshedpur.
In
No, no, no,
Jamshedpur.
not really. Not right now. See, it's too early to jump out. You have to see to it that where you stand, you have a feet firm up there, where you can actually be standing strong. Once you have that in place, you can replicate this anywhere else.
Hmm.
It's not going to be so difficult. TSA as it is a big brand. But apart from that, building a culture locally and everything, that is something that one is trying to do.
Yeah, that's great. You know,
And we
yeah.
managed something, sorry,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, sir.
so we managed to attach something like 10 schools. Huh? So that was matter of 1.5 year. We have 10 schools which we run with. Plus we have 22 other centers which are basically our regional centers which are attached with more like government and our CSR programs. Those schools are also attached to us. So we have almost, those 32 odd schools attached with us, which is good.
So,
Where these kids train
yeah,
regularly.
in a way, like it seems you run into Tata led or Tata assisted projects in Indian football, no matter where you go. Because I remember I was in MFA, one of the MFA annual programs, and there I was hearing about Tata Group helping out with some academy setups and other grassroots programs. Are those somehow connecting to this whole network that's
Yeah,
being set up here?
when you say MSA, you're talking about Mizoram?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, though it is part of the group, but basically Tata Trust, which was investing in it. So they
Yeah.
are all Tata Trust is a non-commercial entity, and they are basically into education, livelihood, and now sports, but primarily into education and livelihood. To help these slightly underprivileged and developing areas, they could uh, provide support over there. And we thought this was a sports was the best unifying platform
Mm.
for reaching out in these regions. And that's where the football part, which is so much prevalent in northeastern region and so much more in Mizoram, one had started. So I think the team there had, but we were engaging together. In fact, the first step, which because Tata Steel had this expertise, I remember first time when it was wanting to be set rolling in 2016 itself. I had been to Mizoram where they, with the state government, we had done a presentation along with Tata Trust uh, members as to how this can be taken forward and how coaching needs is important. How the programs that we're doing in Jamshedpur with PSA, how they can be, linked up. So all this was discussed at that point of time, and more the thing was people there are very passionate about the game.
Yeah.
So converting was not so difficult. They already had small time programs, but the Tata Trust invested over there with us, the Center of Excellence, which was also connected to us. So like the boys that they were taking into the fold was between 11, 12, 13, 14, and we take boys from 15 onwards. So it was synergized in that sense.
So, when it comes to popularity of football, uh, of the region surrounding Jamshedpur itself, especially the tribal belt, football has been popular there for decades now. Like it's one of those very like it's not reached yet by most academies and clubs, but it's always had its own little circuits where football was played, and big crowds always showed up to the local games. So, are you uh, you know is there any plan in place to reach out to this particular crowd?
So I'll just share with you. Typically, football has been prevalent here, and
Yeah,
just to share with you, there is a league, local league, which is called Jamshedpur Sporting Association,
yeah,
which is celebrating 75 years now. Now, usually you will find that the football as a game is very popular in coastal parts. So you have
mm,
Karnataka, sorry, you have Kochi, Maharashtra, Goa, that state, then you have Chennai, Kerala, that stretch, and you have Calcutta where the British entered from. So wherever Portuguese, French, British entered from and spent some time, you have football. But
mm,
when it is place like Jamshedpur and Jharkhand, unfortunately or fortunately, you have a natural liking towards the sport. And 75 years यहाँ league चल रहा है.
yeah,
So it is not a small number. You're talking about pre-independence.
mm,
So it's something to be proud of, and it's there. The local league here typically has draws a lot of crowd.
yeah,
Typically, a small local league, small tournaments that are happening, 78,000 is a number that people is the kind of attendance that you get. So
mm,
that's a big number considering that Bombay City, personally, when they are playing games back in Mumbai, you don't get that kind of number for at the stadium for ISL games.
yeah,
So, from that perspective, and these are people from very low strata, very humble. They go the distance with their own bicycles and stuff. And it's very much there, and we are trying to see. In fact, whenever we started, if you've noticed that, Jamshedpur FC games more or less are consistent in terms of audience on the stadium.
mm,
One of the reasons is the amount of work that we have done in the 50-kilometer diameter in and around Jamshedpur.
mm,
So that's where we basically started focusing, and slowly, of course, this radius will grow. But it's important that you take steps, baby steps. You can't generally start jumping everywhere because you don't have pots of money sitting on it. You basically have, because this is all developmental efforts which takes a lot of money and efforts and time also. It can't be, अगर बच्चा 9 महीने बाद पैदा होने वाला है तो 9 महीने लगने चाहिए. Don't just start splurging money just to get it early. It may not work so well.
yeah,
Network, what one is trying to do, basically we try to work along with all the communities around us, and that ensures that your engagement is there. So all the tournaments will somehow be part of it. Whenever there's a tournament from Jamshedpur, instead of giving money and otherwise kits, what we'll do is we'll basically distribute football. So I see to it that, they remain engaged with the sport.
yeah,
Okay. So these are things that we try to do, which has earned us lot of dividends. So today when we talk about the community, they are the first one to buy our tickets and they are there in the stand for me.
yeah,
So, otherwise the novelty with after 5, 7, 8 games के बाद it starts dipping down.
yeah,
But you're managing this for 3 years. Unfortunately for pandemic now, I don't know how it's going to be next year, but I'm sure they will come back because they're all watching you and they not so easy to just
mm,
forget what the experience that you've been giving me. So वो होगा. It's with net what one is trying to say is we have to engage with the community. We are doing it so far and we'll be taking it done much more deeper. When we're talking about going out in other parts of the country, it may take a while. We'll try to do that in time to come. But it's important that you first see to it that you are very good, or rather you are strong in Jamshedpur, Jharkhand, and then you start stepping out.
yeah.
Because you
What?
have to have that
Mm,
aspirational value, and just because you want to go out and start doing, it will not come out. See, today we have a Barca school sitting in India.
yeah,
You have created that aspiration. तो start Samundar Park a club है. Why they wanting to do and why we even following them? We are doing it because somehow we are now looking at the quality of the game. We can relate to it. That's the aspiration that you have. For you to reach there, you also have to spend some time, have a lot of brassware in your trophy cabinet and stuff like that
Mm.
as you go along. So it will obviously, you have to travel that distance particularly.
Yeah, the reason I asked you because so I'm from Purulia, so that's about a
Okay.
couple of hours by train from Jamshedpur, and I've seen
Right, right, right.
like little villages on the fringes of the West Bengal Jharkhand border, and the kids
Right.
are wearing Jamshedpur FC jerseys. Right. So
Yes, 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 yes.
that's probably the first time I've seen in my life any club sort of having a presence in those communities. So
No, no, very much, very much. And
yeah.
this is thanks to our CSR division because
Yeah.
what we do is we do a lot of football festivals with their help.
Hmm.
So it is about more of a marketing kind of a thing where we try to engage with the community and try to tell them that, if you're willing, then if there's 100 or 200 number, then we'll start a center here.
Hmm.
So our CSR team worked along with us on these grounds, and we go around hosting these festivals, and we usually get that number. But we do it very strategically. First, we do a festival, engage them, see the interest level. If the numbers are good, then start a center. So and when you start a center, then there are certain benefits to that center. So
Hmm.
you have football, the coach has been educated over there. You provide them with jerseys. So the thing is, they start, the relationship with the club begins there.
Hmm.
And if you catch them young, they'll grow with you, yeah.
Mm. So your, it seems in terms of targeted local audience, the crowd you're dealing with is a lot different than the typical ISL crowd that we see in other clubs. You are looking at a much more diverse and much more diverse demographic, and it's not the urban youth, multiplex kind of demographic that most clubs target. So how does that affect
So,
your yeah,
no, not really. I'll tell you what, you are, in my geography, I have just one ball.
yeah,
Okay. So, this is my audience. This is where I stay. So, I'll have to speak to the people around me.
yeah,
Now, if I start segmenting them, think about इस तरीके का आएगा, by default, city में, the kind of access that you have to entertainment, even otherwise, is different.
hmm,
So, they are speaking to people around them. Okay, I'm speaking to people around me. I'm speaking to my community. It's not that I'm, alienating other people who are who are going to malls and otherwise. We have a good audience there as well.
hmm,
But the thing is, if you ask me, the masses in Jamshedpur, you, the factory के अंदर काम करने वाला, you see that if there are 100 people, there are 10 to 20 people who are at the top. 80 people are factory workers.
yeah,
Okay. So by default, the segmentation is that broad. The base is brought down there. Okay. And it's basically from that perspective, Jharkhand otherwise is also very the tribal belt.
hmm,
It can't be the sport for the elite. You have golf for them and you have cricket for others. So I'm not saying that they should go there, but you have a good mix of audience.
yeah,
In fact, among the very few clubs where the fans actually are putting in their own monies and they're making their own films and they're sharing it with the team and stuff. So it is the kind of craze that we have managed in last 2 3 years is amazing. And
hmm.
even I'm surprised to the kind of effect it is having here in the city.
Yeah. The what I was curious about was, is this sort of a conversation that you have in terms of managing your revenue expectations? Like, okay, we need to keep the prices low at this range, and we should not expect
We do, we
this.
do,
And
we do. And no. It is strategic. You have to. Basically, what happens. First
yeah,
of all, it's no point. It's important that you engage this person and give him that experience,
hmm,
and not start milking it because you basically suddenly have him over. Like for example, the first year we kept the ticket price of certain standards 50 rupees, and we continue to keep it that even though those tickets were sold in black outside like 250 rupees.
yeah,
We continued to sell them at 50 rupees because we knew that we wanted that audience to come. Okay. And
hmm,
there are these two stands which we are there, which are mostly bleachers, which are basically streets with just cement, the thing. And then we have other stands which obviously, have a certain value which we sell it at 150 and 200 rupees and sometimes 700 rupees depending on which part of the stand they are. But they are also full. When I'm saying that I'm making 20,000, 25,000 numbers, this would comply only of 10,000 or 12,000.
hmm,
You getting me? The rest of the 12,000 comes from the other community which pays for the tickets and comes in. Now, I also have certain advantages as a city because you have relatively less sources of entertainment, and I have the youth here for me to support. So I think, but we have to work with them. You have to show value to them. Because these are the same guys who watching and consuming other sources of entertainment, which is much better football on television. So all those things have to be factored, and we basically so far we have managed good numbers in the stadium. So I would
Yeah.
say that we are doing it well. And yeah, it can be done better. Yes, it can be done better.
That's awesome. So coming back to the first team, you've been around for 3 years, and are you looking at ISL as a league that's increasing in terms of difficulty that you're facing, or is it actually getting a bit easier for you because you no longer have the early days kind of on the fly thing anymore?
No, no, I didn't get the question right. Yes,
Okay,
sorry,
no, so
just
so as
please
a
repeat
as a
another.
new team, you sort of have to put a lot of things in order without like having a context for past experience of doing the same thing within the same league. So in that sense, is it getting easier, or do you think ISL is getting a bit more difficult because of the level of the football or the
Not
level
really,
of
not.
competitivity? Yeah,
No, not really, not really. See, this is a special year, so I would not talk about it, giving references of, yeah, ये साल कैसे जा रहा है and what are the difficulties in this year. This is completely different, and this is one has to cope with a certain thing, not for me alone, it is for everybody.
yeah,
So things are tough. Things are tough for everyone. That apart, if you're asking me about the setup, see, the setup initially, the first year is always a little different because if you're starting, it's like buying a new home. So you
mm,
put the furniture together and stuff. After about 1 year's time, the furniture is there. You're just trying to, bring it and stuff like that. That's what you're doing. Again, now there again it will depend on expenditure. What you call your overall ambitions and experience that you want to put in there. So today, the aspiration was always there. We wanted to be in the top four and therefore and reach the finals every year. For some reason or the other, the game the way it is, things may not go in your favor. While when in the first year itself, one reached the top five and we lost the top four slot for a whiskers. Now, there were other six teams below us which were having better experience than us.
yeah,
But it's not about that. It's also about at that point of time where we land. So, yes, last year we were on the close to the bottom of the table. We were eighth on the table. Now
mm,
we had our own share of worries last year, where four of your foreigners got major injuries, which is
mm,
very unusual in one particular season. So you have one or two guys getting injured, or you get a short-term injuries of 2 to 3 weeks. But we had proper fractures.
yeah,
Okay, so which are impact injuries are nothing to do with fitness. So that something hampered your complete performance last year. In fact, I was expecting myself to be the bottom of the table. So we did fairly well, if you ask me, because the kind of injuries that happened and the kind of sequence it happened, or rather the
mm,
period. Like Kitty went out in the fourth game, and
yeah,
he was a top player.
yeah,
Castile in the sixth game got injured, and after that, otherwise he was a top scorer. All that while he had scored quite a bit of goals, and we thought he was going to be a top scorer that year.
yeah,
But after that, he played, but he was only 40 to 50% that he was playing.
mm,
In terms of his own capacity,
yeah,
which was unfortunate because he was not completely healed, and I didn't have an option. And after everything, there's no way who was there who was a top winger. He broke his shoulder. He came back later, but again, he was not completely recovered because that was a fracture. It was not something which is, a muscle injury. कि tear है थोड़ा heal हो गया आ गया.
yeah,
He had trouble with. Then that these boys played for you. Hats off to them. It's really that one actually is obligated to them, but they were not 100%. And
mm,
then it reflected on the performance the way it did. And of everything else, after doing everything, you had TD who got a rib fracture.
yeah,
That too with Subrato's knee. Now the
yeah,
defense, when you're falling apart in the front, and now you have a defender who is your key defender, whom you lose.
yeah.
So these are unfortunate things that happen, but you have to cope with it. That's the way the game is. It teaches a lot of things to you, and you have to deal with it. Right?
So, are you looking at this season as like a as one that the club really pushes forward with its ambition to plant its flag at the top of Indian football, or is this because of the pandemic? Is this like a let's see this
Not
through and
really,
then
not really.
yeah,
See, no, 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 not really. We basically are pushing ourselves. We never thought that we will. Because it's something like half measures. Right? You always play to win.
Hmm.
So you will put in a full effort, and one is. If you ask me, last year also we did the same. We were unfortunate. Year before last also we tried to do the same. We scored as many goals as Bangalore, which won the championship.
Yeah.
Those are things that happened to you. In the first year itself, when we came in, basically we were the one. Though we were fifth on the table, it's our goalkeeper who got a golden glove because he
Yeah.
conceded only 16 goals.
Hmm.
You're getting me? No, you had so many clean sheets, but you had so many draws that it hurt you later because then what happens is you're not sticking on the point table.
Yeah.
So you were unlucky. At the same time, some things had been work in your favor, but at the same time, you keep pushing. But every year, if you ask me, the intention was to win,
Hmm.
okay, and be in the top four and win the league. So there was ambition was maybe never short in the last 3 years. Even this year, the ambition is very high, and so those things will continue. Those things will continue. I don't know where we will land this year, but if you ask me, efforts have been made with an intention to be on the top of the table.
Okay. As just to nitpick a little bit, as a CEO, what do you see more value in, topping the table or winning the playoffs?
Both, both.
But if
So
you had to
see,
pick one.
winning the playoffs obviously because then you know that you have the momentum and it would be the next step to win the championship. So if you ask me, if the first step is actually winning the playoffs,
Hmm.
you, I'm not talking about winning the playoffs as in making it to the playoffs. I'm
Yeah.
talking about being on the top of the table as the league per se. So that's my ambition because that's also something that one wants to do in terms of numbers.
Okay, so
But of course,
your primary goal is to be top of the table in the league stage.
yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that brings more value to the club because you win the league shield and you play in the AFC Champions League, or do you think like it's in terms of optics it's more rewarding to win the final?
See, I'll tell you, both these rewards, nothing is less or more. Okay, if you ask me, and
Okay.
it's the aspiration the way you want to put it. Okay,
Yeah.
and it's not that एक चाहिए दूसरा नहीं चाहिए.
Mm. All right. So, you talked about earlier, you mentioned like there is already a plan set for the next decade and where the club should go nationally and beyond India. So, could you share with us what you're targeting? Like, at which point are you targeting a place in AFC Cup, or how far you're envisioning going in AFC Cup within the next 10 years, if we say?
Uh, Sorry, just come again. Just come again. Just break it up again and say.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
So you said like there's already a long-term plan in place for the club's progress and targets, right? So could you sort of share with us what deadline you're setting for yourself, basically, to like get into AFC Cup or AFC Champions League, and how far do you think you will go in those tournaments within the next 10
So
years,
just
if
to
we
share
say?
with you, just to share with you, when we made the plans in the first 5 years, we were supposed to be playing AFC twice.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have to keep those ambitions and we have to drive the club and the mission in that manner. Okay. Unless you have that kind of drive and this thing, it will not work. But what happens otherwise is different. So where I see myself playing AFC next year. Yes, I'm working towards it and I want to do that.
Yeah.
Whether I'll be successful doing that, I'm not too sure because the way it is, it may happen, it may not happen. But we are going to put 100% and see to it that we move in that direction.
Hmm.
Okay, and see to it that happens. But there are teams which are playing well. There are 10 teams which are competing apart from me for the same slot which everybody is looking at.
Yeah.
There's only one trophy. There's only one spot up there, and
Hmm.
everybody is playing well. There's not a weak or a strong team, if you ask me. It will always depend on the circumstances. Like last year, we collapsed after the first 10 games. I feel first half of first round we were in top four always.
Hmm.
So these are things that you might have to just figure out. You have to wait because that's the way football is, and it teaches you a lot of life lessons in that sense. So you put in your best and hope for the best. That's what I would say.
Okay, talking about tournaments other than ISL, this season, of course, we're not having a normal season, but normally if we look at last season as an example, we are seeing these old tournaments like Durand Cup or maybe IFA Shield. They're popping back up again, and they sort of present themselves as a great preseason opportunity for clubs to hone themselves before they get into the National League season. Are you
Of
looking
course,
at
of
them
course.
as preparatory tournaments that are important for Jamshedpur FC to play in? How enthusiastic about are you about
Yeah.
those competitions?
So I'll tell you, typically, IFA Shield to now has become an under-19 tournament. So
Yeah,
our TSA team participates and we won it 2 years back and stuff
yeah,
like that. When coming to Durand, it can be looked at in that manner, the way you're saying. It can be a preparatory
mm,
tournament if it's slotted well. If it is basically positioned in a manner where, it basically starts in sometime uh, end of September, runs into October, and within the 30 days. So it could be a good pre-season, so to say, to me. Okay, where good teams can participate and play. But having said that, um, we'll be using them as unless they have the best part. It depends on the participation purely.
yeah,
So it depends on who plays it. If you suddenly find only second division teams participating and only two, three for ISL teams participating, then it is not the competition. Okay,
mm,
whether you value it, yes, in terms of their legendary this is history and whatever, Durand Cup is right up there. But it has to have that value when you actually present it as a tournament now in today's day and time.
mm,
Okay. So you can't have just a Mohammedan Sporting and the Minerva and few others participating and then you say कि बस ये करना है because then the coach will also take it with a pinch of salt and try to play your young players and whatever and it is not a proper representation and you're not doing it's more like a an effort where you are going to test your young players.
yeah,
Okay, so it depends on how the tournament is positioned, what is the kind of participation, what is the ambition of that tournament organizer. Durant is big. I mean,
mm,
Rovers Cup once when I was in Bombay, we were trying to revive Rovers Cup. It's
yeah,
big, but all these tournaments at that point of time we didn't have leagues, so we had only tournaments largely.
mm,
Okay, and that's why these cups made sense. But today, day and time, you have to figure out where you slot them and how do you characterize them. What is the purpose of that particular tournament? What is it going to do? Is it just because it's a history it is to डालो फिर से?
mm,
That may not they may not be able to sustain themselves in that slot. So they
yeah,
might have to sit on the drawing board, sit with all the football federation, slot themselves in a manner where they can either like the way IFA Shield is converted itself into a 19 tournament and somebody else
it
actually
went
takes
back
up
to
some other
senior
slot.
now.
Yeah. So I'm saying, but that has to be thought through
Yeah,
because whether it goes back to the senior and you have lots of local Kolkata teams participating, it will not be valued the way it was valued once upon a time. You're getting me?
yeah,
So you have to see to it to sustain yourself not only in terms of money, it's also about sustaining yourself in terms of quality of play.
yeah. So, if this is like well positioned, like it ends about 4 weeks before the ISL season starts, and you see there are let's say 4 or 5 other ISL teams, participating, would you
Yes,
be
yes, by all
in
means.
yeah, would you be in
By all
favor of
means, by
sending
all
a
means.
first team?
We will be. See, I'll tell you
Okay.
what, typically, it's, just to share with you, again, typically one has to speak to the league and figure out. Because the league also has its own agenda and they have their own commercial, what they call, guidelines to the whole program. Because the reason ISL has been started, there are certain commercial rights which are involved. So they have to sit along with the AIFF and ISL and then chart out their positioning.
Mm.
Okay. So while I would want to participate as a team, there are things which I am obligated to do with FSDL.
Yeah.
Okay. So all these things have to be managed. Of course, if you ask me if I see an advantage, yes, I see an advantage.
Okay.
Again, it will depend on when it is slotted because getting all these foreigners and all these Indians to be staying together, the expenditure levels the way they are in ISL versus I League is very different.
Yeah.
So I be participating and trying to put them up in a certain way and manner. Now logistics itself is much more expensive than others. I'm talking about an I League ISL and therefore a second division team. So this is not compared at all. It can't be compared in the first place.
Mm.
But such tournaments will throw up a lot of talent. So they need to be there. And I think the Super Cup which is there also. So then maybe you can actually look at Super Cup being converted in certain things.
Yeah.
So those are things that can be looked at.
Also, there is that aspect of outreach that comes with these tournaments. Like Durand Cup was held in
Exactly.
Kolkata. It got good crowd, and Gokulam Kerala FC got a bit good bit of popularity back in Kerala for winning it. Are you have you ever sort of considered, let's say, hosting a tournament like Durand Cup in Jamshedpur as an outreach initiative, as well as showing?
We can do that.
Yeah.
See, there are things which will not go in our favor. One is
Okay.
the number of grounds that Calcutta as a city can offer is very different from what Jamshedpur as a city can offer.
Hmm.
We have a lot of open spaces. Doing up all those spaces, see, right now there are ready Maidans which are there in Calcutta, which are 20 times more than me.
Hmm.
So you're not even close by to that. Okay.
Okay.
So you can't compare yourself to whatever. So like for example, every panchayat has a ground of its own.
Hmm.
Okay, because that's how it's culturally set here. So that's why ISL could host themselves here and they can't go to Kerala, however much they want it.
Hmm.
Because between cities also, if they have to travel, they have to fly, which is
Hmm.
again breaking the bubble. So that could have not been feasible at all. So, so if you ask me, I think we have hosted the Federation Cup or something once upon a time.
Yeah.
We were hosting under what you call age group tournaments. I think under 18 part of it was hosted in Kerala, Jamshedpur.
Yeah.
So we have good quality stadiums, but maybe not the number. We can't match up the number. If
Yeah.
you want 6 stadiums, I don't have.
Okay. So you have sort of seen through a huge transformation. I mean, you actually got into ISL at a very transformative stage. You started off with relatively smaller league, and you had the drafts and the auctions and everything. Now ISL is structurally looking a bit different in that way. So are you sort of finding this new expanding ISL better than the older ISL with drafts and auctions and all the other systems in place?
You see, the draft and auction was bought in only in 2017 because there
Yeah.
are two new teams joining in. Okay, because otherwise, Mycleton, at least Bengaluru had the I League Connect.
Mm.
So they had their own players which were there. It would have been a big disadvantage though. But having said that, it was only for that season and it was done much, much before. I think 2014 में शायद किया था. And
Mm.
after that, you were taking players from the market. So you were not obligated to go through the auction process.
Yeah.
Or rather, not, there was no auction process as such. And even otherwise, I think knowing the numbers, where you're talking about the numbers, see, India, the kind of size and the kind of population that we have, 11 is very smaller number. And second thing is you have to have a league which is much longer than what it is today
Yeah.
to make it cost efficient. Because today we are talking about engagement of almost 4 months, 4.5 months, barely,
Mm.
which is not a good thing for Indian footballers as well. Because if you don't play throughout the year and you don't engage yourself, because our players don't go out and play. While these
Mm.
foreigners, after finishing with match day, he might go and play in Vietnam for 3 months. Otherwise, he'll go to take a transfer to other place and play in other countries for some more time. So
True.
at least 8.5 months is what you should need in engagement. मतलब वो होना चाहिए. And I'm sure ISL and AIFF are working in that direction.
Yeah.
But you need that the longer league so that you have fit footballers, more football to watch as a program content, and people get into this habit of watching.
So you are
It's
in
not
favor of
only,
you are in favor of a 14 to 18 kind of team ISL.
of course, 16 teams at least. But in another 4 5 years, we should be reaching there.
Okay. And are you also in favor of reducing the foreign players to like 4 or 5 per squad? And like we've heard within ISL there are differing opinions on that. So where do you stand?
See, I'll tell you, it's a double-edged sword. There's lots we can learn from the foreigners. The quality you must have seen, they're very different. Indian players are coping and reaching there, and they are getting better. But with the numbers reducing, yes, of course. See, today, it's very difficult to find an Indian striker. Okay, apart from a couple of few that you can count on your fingers, you don't have any good strikers which are there. It's again because of the opportunity that in that space that you have. So most of the space, strikers, we basically want to engage a foreigner. For
Yeah.
obvious reasons, because you want to win the league and stuff like that. So having said that, for own development, we'll get more spots for Indians. Of course, that's a benefit. But while doing that, one has to see to it that you have this audience which is come to you now. The
Mhm.
quality has somehow is not dropped. The quality of football should not go down.
Yeah.
Okay. because that is something that, so it's a double-edged sword, but I would still lean on reducing the number so that it gets more and more for larger good of Indian football.
Yeah. So, do you see Jamshedpur FC having a little bit of an advantage later on when the number of foreign players are reduced because of the existing grassroots network or a long-standing academy that's uh, connected
In
with
the
your
long
club?
term, yes. In the long term, yes. It does. It does make sense, and it will make a lot of. We will have that advantage over others if others don't invest in a similar manner. I'm not saying this because Goa, I'm sure they're doing. Bangalore is doing something. Everybody has because AFC has basically mandated that you should have a youth system. So not everybody is following, but if they come on you strongly, you will have to do it. Which most of them would actually get into if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, and since I have you here, just an obligatory sort of touching base with you is where do you stand on promotion relegation being implemented in ISL over the next few years?
It would be. In fact, I think starting 2023, we
Yeah.
might have 23-24 season might see that. And it is necessary. If you ask me, this protection is good.
Mm.
It is. I think it has come into being just to see to that you have a stable this thing league. Once the league is stabilized, I think you have to have a competitive edge and advantage and disadvantage if you don't perform too well. And therefore, you have aspiration for teams below the line where they know that if they come up, they will basically reach there. But in today's day and circumstance, where people will dread coming into this fold because if you're not making money and losing more money if you come into ISL, then the players are sorry, the league, so the teams below would rather prefer to stay back than come up.
So, but on like on a first principle basis, you are not opposed to like running your club with
Not at all.
the yeah. Okay. All right. So
No,
yeah.
if you ask me yes or no kind of an answer,
Yeah.
so promotion relegation, it should be there.
Okay, that's great, sir. Just to round everything up, you are happy with the way the team got to do preseason this time, or do you think something was a bit lacking in the end?
No, see, we had trouble getting foreigners back into our fold. It was tough getting that aligned. There were lots of restrictions. It was difficult. It was not so easy. And if your key players are not around and you do your preseason, it is not the kind of preseason you want to do. Okay. Because it is
Mm.
supposed to be together. You bond together. You work together. You start understanding each other's game, and
Yeah.
then that's what makes a team a team. So it could have been better. Yes, it could have been better. I'm unhappy with it. Not really. You did whatever best you can with it, and I would not put it as an excuse कि हमारा ये नहीं हुआ था.
Mm.
Every team had their share of trouble, and I think we'll all cope with it. We'll just have to look at how we're going to do going forward. And if you keep cribbing about what's happened to you in the past, you'll never land where you want to land. So
Mm.
that's one. Second thing, when I was talking about the thing that when you were asking about the league relegation promotion, so today you're spending 100 rupees, okay,
Mm.
whereas in I League you might be spending 40 rupees. Now that
Yeah.
gap is huge. It's not basically 10 rupees and 20 rupees, okay. You're almost 40% and 100%. So that gap is so huge that tomorrow if I League team gets promoted into ISL, they will actually dread. And was talking from that perspective because
Mm.
the amount of money he'll have to spend and the recovery that would happen, he would suddenly feel मैं यहाँ से ये कहाँ से लाऊंगा. He will have to start looking for sponsors. So
Yeah.
well-established teams themselves are not having sponsors. So where is that money going to come from? Is what that's the kind of
Yeah,
thing I'm
but
talking about the circumstance the way they are.
yeah, but see, things will sort of even out over time, right? Because teams will be preparing for a possible promotion to ISL, and they will be like making
No,
changes
there
in
would
their
be.
management as well.
No, I'll tell you. No, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. It's not so easy as it's said. Because where will that money come from? For example, East Bengal Mohan Bagan
Mm.
took 4 years to get a sponsor to come on board here or get the financial support to reach here. Now, a stronger team like Mohan Bagan, East Bengal, with the kind of legacy that they have, took so much while.
It's a bit more
Imagine,
complex than that. Like
it is
there
not
were
as
other
easy as
factors
it's
in
said.
play.
No, no. Otherwise, also, I'm saying it's not easy.
Mm.
It's not easy for anybody to come into play with that kind of investment
Mm.
because मतलब, it's a lot of money. Huh? It's a lot of money. If a team spends close to 40 to 50 crores in ISL and an I League team runs on a 10 crore and 12 crore budget or maybe less than that,
Mm.
the gap is huge. 30 crores
Yeah,
का
but
gap
a
कहाँ
lot
से
of
fill
that
up
is
करोगे?
franchisee fee, right? and a lot of that
No,
is
but lot of
extra
it,
marketing.
not, no, but that you have to do, no?
Yeah.
It's not that tomorrow because an I-League team is going to come, the franchise fee is going to be waived off. If that is the story,
The
then of course
franchise
it will
fee
be waived
will
off for everybody.
go out of the picture, right? For the
No, no, yeah,
clubs.
sorry. It will,
Yeah.
no, but that apart, that apart. I'm saying it today, for example, a certain team goes and stays in a five-star,
Mm.
okay, which was not the story because I have run an I-League team also.
Yeah.
The reason there is to look at the stars and then book a hotel.
Mm.
But here, when everybody else is in that, the moral listing about the team which is coming in, it is very different.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy for that team to, cope with it. So all those things matter. See, franchisee fee, I'm just telling you, just to give you an example,
Yeah.
if
Sure.
50 crores is what somebody is spending, 15 crores, it is 30% of the fee is franchisee.
Mm.
But there is 70% component which is into team management and other things.
Mm.
So franchisee fee is there, but it is 30% of the component.
Yeah, but you look at clubs like Gokulam Kerala FC and certain others who do have the potential to sort of scale up in that way, and others can also get more sponsors or investors if they're playing in ISL and they have the guarantee of a great telecast. That automatically raises their market value, right?
No, I don't know. I'll tell you, that is easier said than done. We have yet
Yeah,
to
sure. It's tough.
travel the distance. No, I'm telling you, we have to travel the distance. We're talking about 23, it's just 3 years, 3 seasons away.
Yeah, and
3 seasons
and
में
there will be a
Gokulam can
build-up
spend the
effect,
money which
right?
Kerala Blasters is spending. No, but it is, we have already spent 7 seasons here.
Yeah.
What is the build-up we're talking about?
No, for the clubs, like there's a build-up for Gokulam Kerala FC for the next 3 years if they're
No,
trying to
but
get into ISL.
what I'm saying is that's not easy because the kind of money that one is talking about is huge.
Yeah, sure. I
Gokulam,
mean,
see Kerala Blasters, I'm just saying, look at Kerala Blasters, if you look at them as an established club today,
mm,
they had, the reality being in journalism,
yeah, sure.
they had to let go certain players with the kind of following that they have, the kind of support that they have. They are probably one of the top clubs which gets invested, advertising revenue
Mm,
or other sponsorship revenue. So it was tough for them.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, and if that was tough for them, just imagine somebody coming into that fold. See, 30 crores out of pocket expense karna is not easy.
No, it's not. But see, if
Okay,
somebody is already spending like let's say 15 crore and they sort of scale it up somehow to 20 to 25 crore, that will still be a competitive team that can gain momentum and become better
I'm not.
in a few
I'm not
years.
too sure whether Gokulam is spending 15 crores.
Yeah, I'm
Gokulam is
just
sub 10.
using
Like,
it as an example.
no,
Like
no,
for 10 crore, it can go to 15 crore. Like from for
it's
Churchill
not.
XP.
Just to pitch in right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we are going a little bit off topic, Chiranjit.
Okay, okay, sure, sure, sure. All right.
Yeah.
All right, just
No,
just
no, it's
wanted
okay.
to
It's
ask
okay.
to like sort of round it up. I wanted to ask about how you feel about Owen Coyle, coaching the team, and how do you think the team will perform in the next few rounds?
So, see, looking at the way things are, the kind of quality of players that one has, one is very hopeful because we
Yeah,
have picked up players the way it would suit you and the coach the best. Coach had come on board, and we had the reason why we picked him was also the
yeah,
kind of performance that he showed in last season, where he took the bottom table team with the same team which was not doing so well, with good man management and the kind of skills that he has. Of course, he has a fantastic experience where he has been with the Premiership and stuff. So,
yeah,
and of course, he proved himself with in ISL as well.
yeah,
So,
sure.
I think with all that ingredients, I think we should be able to do well. And it's a matter of time. We have not been very lucky in the first part. But, and of course, there was some minor injuries which one is coping with. But that is just a matter of time. I think it's another few days and things will be different.
Okay, just if I can get one more minute of your time, Jal, if you would allow me, I just one question I thought I would ask your opinion on. Given the way the season has gone on due to COVID-19, and we are sort of turning a corner, a vaccine might come into play in January, February. What is your opinion on vaccinating the players and other staff on the ground? If that issue is brought up to you, would you rather have the players vaccinated and let some crowd in for the last few weeks of the season, or would you rather just have everybody stay in the bubble and just get done with the season first and think about the next
See,
season later?
I see, honestly, I'm not very sure. Hello. So, see, I'll tell you, January is not too far. Okay, it is just 15 days away, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So, and by that time, by 10th of January, you've played half the season. Audience lana will be not wise by the time, because the audience for vaccination, one doesn't know the logistics will take some time.
Yeah.
The way the government is posing it, they would first take care of the frontline workers, so to be police and other services and then doctors and everybody, and then slowly and steadily it will be distributed among others. This will obviously eat up into your February as well. But I'm being ambitious when I'm saying for February. Yeah?
Yeah.
It will go into March and April fall, you know. But saying that it's February, by February your league games will be over and you'll be left with finals and semi-finals. By that time, I'm not too sure public तक पहुंचेगा कि नहीं vaccine. And then testing whether people have got that vaccination certificate or not, and then letting him in. I think this season we should just give it a pass. Maybe we have to. I'm not saying अगर आ जाता है, I suddenly realize कि कल email से सबको vaccination भेजने वाले हैं, तो that's a different story. but otherwise, logistically, it looks a little bit of a challenge and much more ambitious than what it is. I think we will have to give it a pass.
Thank you so much, sir, for talking to me and giving me your time. It was very frank and very informative, sir.
So, do you think Jamshedpur FC will succeed in ISL and in the Asian stage? And do you think what they're doing can be a model for future football clubs in Indian football? Let us know in the comments section. And if there's something else about this club you want to be discussed in future episodes, ask us about that as well. And of course, for all the news and updates about Indian football and exclusive content, follow @TFG Football on Twitter and keep an eye on thefangarage.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll come back soon with the next episode. Goodbye till then.